Hello, I'm Daniela, and welcome to the Stitch With Me in 2023 online workshop. Today's video is for prompt 11, and that's kind of close to the end. We're only 2 prompts away from being completed with this project. Today's prompt, we'll get right to it, is letter. And that's kind of an interesting prompt. Letter has multiple meanings. It can be your favorite letter from the alphabet, and there are so many alphabets to choose from. It can be a letter as it means to you, kind of like maybe in school, a varsity letter for sports. Or it could be a letter like a manuscript or a note. So there's lots of possibilities, and I can't wait to show you what I've come up with. So for my prompt's letter, I'm not going to embroider a particular letter or use a varsity letter on my piece. I'm going to attach a little letter, a little handwritten note. And I just took a piece of cardstock and folded it in half, small enough that it has room here. And I attached a little piece of ribbon. This way I could slide it out easy enough. And I want to just put some fabric on the front. And so I'm just going to use a little applique method for that. This is the fabric that I'm going to use for the backing and to make the pocket. It's a beautiful piece of fabric. I have some matching thread to stitch that down. I thought I'd put a little lace trim here on that pocket. But I wanted to first start by really embellishing this little letter. I haven't written anything yet. I'm going to write it on the back. But what I want to do is just take some of this fusible adhesive and make sure that it fits the front of the letter. Using my iron, I'll press it down and attach that. It's just an aesthetic piece. I just thought it would look really nice. It would change it from being just a boring piece of cardstock. So I'm cutting the fusible adhesive just to fit the cardstock. Just like this. And now I'll just press it down on the paper side. It only takes about 30 seconds. You're trying to melt the plastic on that other side of that paper. It's a little off center here, but that's okay. When it cools, I can remove it, and then I'll just decide how I want my fabric, what formation I want my fabric to go. I think it's intended to go like this, but I think I like it on the side. It's a very interesting piece. Now when I remove this paper, the adhesive will remain right here on my cardstock. You can see around the edge. So I'll just trim it off the edge. I don't need that melting anywhere. And then just remove it from my scissors. And so now I'll decide how I want this to go on. And I'll trim away anything that remains. The only thing that will stick is where there is adhesive. And then I'll just press it down. And again, I'm trying to remelt that glue, have it absorb into the fabric, and then when I remove it and it cools, I can cut around the piece. So I'll let this cool, and then I can trim around the piece. But right now I want to plan my size here of my pocket, and I'm going to use the iron again just to form that nice pocket. So the first thing I want to do is cut this to width. I'll just cut it over here. And then I like that rough edge, so I'll just tear it apart. And so that fits fairly nicely. And get rid of any of the frayed pieces. And then I want the pocket to cover most of the piece. So I'll bring it up, and then I'll bring this down again. And I can tuck my card, my letter, in there. So that's a little high for that letter. So I'll bring it up just to there. Much better. So now that I have the right height, I'm going to take my iron and press it straight across. This is a temporary hold. I'm not using any adhesive or any fusible web. Just trying to crease the fabric. So there I have my pocket ready to go. So that's the end of me needing the iron, so I can shut that off. I can either tuck that fabric underneath or just cut it off, or tuck it underneath this way, which I think I kind of like that. So there are quite a few layers of fabric on the bottom of this piece. Yeah, I like the way that's coming out. So I'm not going to attach it to the card yet. I'm going to do all my sewing first. And I want to sew this little trim on the end of the pocket, but I don't want to attach it to this piece yet. So I'm just going to take the trim, and I'll take some thread that matches the trim. And I'm going to come up here, and I'll come up from underneath the lace. That will hide my knot. Trim that down a little bit as well. And now I'm just going to do a simple stitch. I think I'll just kind of stitch over the piece just to hold it in place. I could do a straight stitch, but I think I like this little stitch going over it, kind of a whip stitch. And I can either tuck the end of the lace underneath or just cut it off. And this is fairly thick lace, so I think I'll cut it off. But so that it doesn't fray, or at least cut down on the fraying, I'm going to stitch right down the length over here that sticks out. So I'll come around my last whip stitch on the side. And then I'll just stitch the length here. I really love this lace that's crocheted with cotton. I just think it's so beautiful. It has so much texture. So I'll knot my thread and then continue that stitch across and down. So I finished stitching my little lace, my accent piece here, and now I just want to line up my fabric so that when it's down on the card, it will line up exactly as I want it. That looks pretty good. Now I can sew the pocket. I'll take a little pin to hold it in place, and now I have some thread that matches that teal. What a beautiful color. I'm going to come up from the side here underneath my pocket layer here, and now I'm just going to do a straight stitch, and I'm going to go the length up and down here on the pocket. I like to use tiny stitches when I'm going through that crocheted lace. It catches on some of the stitching and it's not too distracting. And then when I get to the end, I'll knot my thread and stitch on the other side going up that pocket. So I have my pocket entirely stitched here, ready to go on my card. That's the back. You can see the folded over edge, my little stitching lines. So for this, my little card that is actually my letter, I'm just going to cut very close to the card, just cutting that fabric away. So there, a few tries, but I got it. So now I can write my little personal message here on the back, tuck it in, and I have my little pocket. I'm going to attach this to my card. It's fairly simple, very plain, but I think I like it. It's a little surprise tucked away in that pocket, a letter. So that's how I created my letter, the prompt for November. It's kind of a fun little thing that I tucked into my work. It's a little personal, it's a little bit hidden, and yet it still qualifies as a letter. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thank you for posting your work in our Facebook group so I can see everybody's progress and all their prompts that they've created throughout the year. I really have enjoyed it tremendously. I'll see you next month for our final prompt in Stitch with Me in 2023.